Hi, my name is Troy Vermillion, and I'd like to welcome you back to What the Tech. This is a podcast where we'll explore all things technology and how innovation and the evolution of technology are actually changing the business world. On today's show, we'll explore the healthcare IT space and how vital it is for providing critical, important services to actually the healthcare providers and their patients. So from cloud-based solutions to data analytics tools, companies need to stay ahead of developments if they want to remain competitive. So by the end of this discussion, you'll have a clearer idea of what it takes to succeed in this space by understanding technology trends that are actually shaping advances in IT innovation, to identifying areas of opportunity where new players can actually gain an edge over established ones. So I'm excited to have you join us today as we explore these exciting things in and around the world of healthcare IT, as well as the implications for current players and those interested in entering the market. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the What the Tech podcast. Now, as a chief officer in healthcare space, it's likely you want to stay on top of the latest technology trends and strategies. So if this is true for you as it is for me, then today we've got a great conversation lined up for you. And I've fortunately enough been able to secure an interview with one of the most foremost experts in the concierge medical space as the current chief operating officer for PartnerMD, with over 30 years of experience in some of the world's most innovative companies. Now, he's also got some unique perspectives on the future of technology in healthcare as AI and information sharing and APIs are actually beginning to shape the healthcare of our futures. So my next guest today is Jack Bretcher. Jack, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Troy. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. I've been excited about this one. I think you've got a very unique background. You know, we talked a little bit about your current role as COO, but for the majority of your career, you've actually spent it in the chief technology officer role or other, technology-focused role. So I think you actually bring a very unique perspective to your operations role because of that background. So excited to hear more about that. But before we do that, as I had mentioned to you before, I'd like to have a little bit of an icebreaker conversation. So there's a new acronym that I've kind of put together. You're actually the first one to get to go through it. So I'm excited to hear your responses. No pressure or anything like that. But, what is a podcast? I think a podcast, should be food for your listeners, like, things that they enjoy listening about, they're interested in, maybe talking about challenges that they're actually having in their lives, in their businesses. And I want What the Tech podcast to certainly be that. And so I came up with an acronym. Again, you're the first person going through this, so no pressure. But it's called EAT. And so we're going to talk through maybe an embarrassing moment that you had at some point in your past. We're going to talk about some adversity that you came through or encountered along the way, and then a truth that you live by. And so let's start off with an embarrassing moment or a funny moment that you've had at some point in your past that you learned from.
Sure. So, I'd love these things, not, but here we go anyway. So I kind of, reach back into my past, and I don't know why this still sticks with me. I'm a lot of years older than when I was in high school, but I'm gonna reflect back on an experience in high school, and I guess kind of it must have taught me a lesson, is why it stuck with me. So I grew up on the East Coast and went to school in New Jersey, and we'd have these trips during the winter to go skiing. And I had a group of friends. I was an athlete in school, so all of my friends were, pretty athletic, and, they grew up skiing. So I decided one time, this sounds like a bunch of fun. I'm going to go with them to, I think it was a mountain in New York someplace. And at that time I was still 10 foot tall and bulletproof, so nothing fazed me. So I, get there with them, get out of the bus, get the ski gear on, hop in the gondola, go to the top of the mountain. And we all get out of the gondola and, kind of put our skis on. And, I look up and everybody's skiing off. And this is back in the day where everybody skied with their skis about, half an inch apart. And everybody's kind of flying down the mountain. And, shame on me, I didn't do my research before I got there. So I started following them, and I see these little signs on the slopes. And they go down this one that has this interesting black diamond on it. I had no idea what it meant. So I started going down there, looking down the mountain, and realized that I'd made a poor choice at that point. So long story short, I ended, probably the next, hour or so crawling down the mountain, skis in hand, holding on the trees. Finally got down to the bottom of the mountain, and everybody had a good laugh at my expense. But certainly taught me a lesson to do my homework before I start any new endeavor.
My first encounter snowboarding, I never actually skied. I've never skied. I basically just fell down the mountain for an entire day straight. Like, I had more bruises, and luckily I was 18 years old. So, my body could handle it at that point. If I tried to learn it today, the way that I learned it at 18, man, I'd probably be dead. So yeah. I can commiserate with that experience myself.
And that's why I snowboarded one day and never again. It hurt too much the next day. So
yeah. So the takeaway there is maybe do a little preparation.
Absolutely.
Maybe ask a few friends. Maybe take a class. That probably would have been like an easier way to do it.
That is a great point. So fast forward probably 35 years later, I took my first lesson and realized that, in snow skiing, you lean forward, not backwards. So.
Yeah, down the mountain, right? That's almost counterintuitive.
It is.
Well, share an adverse moment in your career that you encountered that really, you were better on the other side of it.
Yeah. So I clearly, there's, obviously having been in business for 30 some years, there's, certainly are a number of them. One of them comes to mind when I was actually living in Austin, Texas, and I was commuting to the East Bay in Northern California, and a startup company there. It was a company in the same space that I'm in now, venture funded. We were about a year old, and we had three main investors that committed to funding the company. Mm-hmm. It was that point in time, about 10 or so years ago, when Facebook went public and expected it to make a big splash, and it didn't. And a lot of the VCs pulled back on some of their investments. We were fairly early in our investment cycle with them. We ended up being one of the casualties of that. So that's kind of the backdrop. The way I learned about this is I was home in Austin for a long weekend, and we were planning on moving to California. I was running product development for the company at that time. So we had our house on the market. It had been on the market for a little while. We were home. That day we got an offer on the house, which was great. So, things are falling into place or moving forward. I get a phone call from our CEO, from my boss out there, and my wife's watching me talking on the phone, and he starts off the conversation as, "Hey, Jack, met with the board, got some news. The investors decided to not put the rest of the investment in the company, and you need to shut the company down." And my wife's looking at me, and my whole expression just drops. And get off the phone, and we're talking. We decided to move forward with selling the house. I spent the next month or so out there shutting the company down. And really kind of used that opportunity to kind of reassess what's important. We sold the house, moved into some temporary vacation rental by owner for about a month or so. It ended up working out just fine, but it was clearly one of those points in time when you think everything is kind of moving the way you expect it to move. That I was in another startup company, looking at a very exciting space, the concierge medicine space. We were doing some interesting things. But the rug gets pulled out, and I ended up through that connecting to members of the board where I'm currently working in our board from the other company, connected me to them, made that introduction. I ended up coming to PartnerMD, actually as chief technology officer initially. Been there 10 years, so out of a crazy time, and a time that you kind of do a bunch of soul searching, it ended up working out well for us, and we've made a life here in Virginia. So both from the professional side as well as the personal side, things worked out.
Yeah, I think you really have two choices there. A lot of people find that adversity like that in your life, you take a sharp left turn, destroys a lot of people. And I think that it really opened another door for you that has, 10 years at any company nowadays is an impressive feat, right? So that means
it is a milestone for me. So that, that is not lost on me. My longest tenure was my first job out of college for 7 years, and I've been in the startup world ever since. So most of my tenures have been in the 3 to 5 year range. So 10 years is a long time, and it's a great company. It's been a great experience.
That's awesome. All right. So a truth that you live by, something that drives or motivates you to be the best that you can be, whether that's professional or personal.
I think it's both. For me, it's health and fitness.
Okay.
As I said earlier, I was an athlete in high school and then in college, and we all work very hard, and we all have a lot of stress in our jobs, regardless of what our job is. If you truly are passionate about doing the best job you can in your role, you're going to take on a lot of stress with it. And and it really kind of lives in the company that I'm working on right now. We are concierge medicine, but we're rooted in living the best life you can live. So I live by the mantra of you need to take care of your body. You really do need to eat right. You need to exercise. I find myself, when I stop doing that, I just tend to internalize a lot more of the stresses and feel a lot worse, and spend a lot of time in mental places that I don't want to be. So my mantra, if you will, is truly take care of yourself. Eat right, exercise. It's a lifelong, passion that once you start doing it, you'll feel guilty when you don't do it. But I know it's very difficult to get to that point where, you're committed to it and it becomes a part of your life. But I would encourage everybody to embrace that and, take it slow, take baby steps, if you will. But the more that you can do that, I think it shows up obviously in your physical being, but also you perform so much better at work, and you are able to disconnect. At least for me, I speak for myself, I'm able to disconnect a lot of the stressors that I have in my professional life and my personal life, and be more present with my family as well.
Yeah. Work those things out by sweating and doing hard things versus having
Absolutely.
to, internalize all of them, hold them all inside. I love working out. I love doing hard things. And so I think that one's near and dear to my heart as well. So I can definitely connect with you on that. Well, thanks for sharing that with me, and going through the first exercise of the EAT acronym. Let's talk a little bit about your experience working in the healthcare industry. Like, just kind of give a bit of a background on that, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I got into healthcare about 12 years ago. Prior to that, my background was really rooted in technology, but in I think around 2011 or so, I joined a company on the West Coast. The company I described in the kind of the first exercise, if you will. It was a startup company, more of a consultative approach to concierge medicine. And I don't know if everybody's familiar with what concierge medicine is, but we are primary care, but our physicians have a much smaller panel of patients. So your traditional doctor, primary care doctor, will carry somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 patients. We'll see somewhere between, on the very low end, 20, some up to 40 patients a day. So you're getting, from a patient's perspective, you're getting, 5 minutes, 10 minutes with your doctor. From the physician perspective, it is, you're kind of on that treadmill, if you will. You're dealing with the acute issue of the day. So that was really my first opportunity to work in the healthcare space. I ran the product development part of this company. We were conceived as a technology-enabled services company, so we were building a core platform to deliver content to patients. You think about how a patient, you go back 10, 12 years ago, their only kind of online interaction with their doctor is a patient portal, and it's purely clinical. What we were trying to build is something where we could deliver more content and more useful information to that population of patients, so they could focus not only on what ails them, but how they become more, how they become better, if you will. It's how to integrate more wellness and healthy lifestyles into their life, and give the tools to the physicians to be able to serve that up to the doctors. So I did that for about a year and a half, as I said, until we had to shut down the company. Then I moved over to my current company, which is PartnerMD. I ran technology in there. Again, we are a little bit of a different model than the prior company. We are a network of offices, so we employ all of our physicians. We manage all of our offices, our remote locations, because we take on all of those kind of administrative burdens for our physicians, to allow our physicians to practice medicine. And my role in the company has been, probably for the first 4 or so years, to really reinvest in infrastructure and technology, and position the technology for the company so that the company could grow. We were acquired by a company called Markel, a multi-billion-dollar company, with the objective to grow the business. And they were initially funded our growth to grow the business. But before we do that, obviously we need to have kind of the right infrastructure in place. So that was my focus for the first probably 4 or 5 years of the company, looking at kind of core infrastructure, be it networks and phones, up through replacing EMRs and core systems. And then moved over into operations, or actually kind of took on operations in addition to technology. And then, looking at the business through more of a delivery and process perspective initially. And again, with a lot of the same objectives. So, we were a business that did very well because we had a lot of very good people that were committed to doing the right things, which is great for a small business, but is not it's missing that standardization and that process for a business that wants to grow. So that was kind of it was my next several years of kind of looking at it through that lens, and looking at, what are we doing well? What are we not doing well? How can we optimize? How do we standardize? So that as we then began to expand into other locations, that we know that the product and the service that we're delivering is a consistent product and service that matches who our brand is and who we aspire to be as a brand.
Well, you've probably gone on this journey because the speed of change with technology today, just kind of looking at the pieces where it makes sense to implement or augment technology into, operations, into process, into, customer facing, platforms and things like that. But what do you feel are some of the largest challenges, specifically in and around the healthcare system today, that, potentially AI or other forms of technology can actually play a role in addressing?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think, AI is kind of at the point within healthcare where it's in my opinion, it's starting to gain a little bit of traction. And you see it across a number of different disciplines. Actually, we had a call, I think it was earlier this week. We have a service that we use to do our medical billing, and largely a manual process. Our docs write their note, they go off to billers who looks at the note, does the coding, and sends the claim off to the payers. There are now companies and technologies out there that are using natural language processing and AI to take a look at the entirety of the note, and not truly just the note, but truly look at what are the meds that the patient's on, what did the doctor document, what are the conditions or the diagnoses that are attached to it, and use that information and effectively code the note for you, code the encounter for you. So I think it's a really interesting use of natural language processing and artificial intelligence to be able to kind of streamline some of that. To pull that off of the doc's plate. So again, the theme is let the docs do what the docs do best. Let them practice at the top of their license. Let them take care of those patients. Let them have that more robust conversations and interactions with the patients, and take some of this off. And when you take it off, like any other business, you want to kind of optimize your business so that you're not scaling your business and you have to scale your staffing to handle that. what I'm seeing in some of the NLP and the AI space is starting to kind of fill some of those gaps, and I think it fits very well into that space. We've also seen a little bit in we use dictation services as well, and we used everything from your Dragon, as well as we have a product called 𝗪𝘂𝘁 that we're using. We've also kind of went down the road probably 2 or so years ago with a service that was purely AI based. So basically, what would happen is the doctor would enable the service, be it on a phone, and that would listen to the conversation of the patient and the doctor and take that and effectively distill the note down from that conversation. I think it works. I think they've had a lot of really interesting success in the specialties where those conversations are much more concise and directed. You think about a concierge medicine practice and primary care, and specifically inside of concierge medicine, your interaction with your physician, it's not that 5-minute interaction, it's that 20 or 30-minute interaction. And it's not only tell me what, Troy, what's ailing you today? It's also, how are your kids? Because it is that more robust view of, what's important to you, and what's important to you today, and what's important to you in the future. So, kind of getting off track a little bit here, but to kind of tie it all back together, I think AI in the dictation space has taken a lot of ground on the specialty side, and I think it is a kind of pure AI, if you will, and I think it works very well there. We've embraced it a little bit looser on the primary care side. We're using services that leverage that as maybe a first pass, but then also have a much more robust scrub on the back end. So then when we get the notes back, the notes are much more complete for our providers. And then there's kind of the whole other end of, kind of how do you integrate that? You kind of go into the whole end of the spectrum. If you go to a bit of Star Wars, where you kind of scan the body with the thing, and I think there are certainly some players out there that are, I exaggerate a little bit, but there are some players out there that are trying to incorporate some of that into their practice as well. I think that is much more immature, if you will. I think there certainly are some opportunities to use some AI and some technology to to kind of take some of the diagnostics, and we've seen a little bit of that. We've seen a little bit of that in some of the full body MRIs and things like that, where it will go through some kind of an AI layer to be able to at least do a first pass. But there's still a lot of reliance on the specialization of the physicians as well.
Well, thanks for sharing, kind of how you're using it. Where do you think there's areas of opportunities for up-and-comers that are maybe developing new technologies and softwares? Like if you were saying, hey, these are the things that you should be thinking about, or maybe even things that you're seeing that still need work.
Yeah, I think it is. Let me kind of take a step back and answer that as I look at technology.
Okay.
So my background has been in technology pretty much my whole career, but it's really been the application of technology to address, really what are the core needs of the business. And I think in healthcare, it's largely the same thing. If you look at what like I described whether it's X-rays, MRI, some of those things there are certain things that that can be, I don't want to say automated, but augmented through with AI. I think there is a lot of opportunity in that space. I think the billing piece, I think, is a huge opportunity. I think that's kind of an interesting way to look at it, where you're not applying the technology in a way that is going to, if it goes awry, you're not compromising care. And I think that is, whether it's a safe way to do it, I think it's, kind of as AI and as those technologies continue to mature, I think it is the application of the technology that will be more embraced by the user community than anything else. Not to say that it's not appropriate for the other areas, but if you're looking at more from a market perspective, I would expect those types of applications to have more commercial success, just because it's easier for me to sign off on that than for me to sign off on something that involves patient care.
That makes a lot of sense, considering the patient is should be number one, right? And with concierge, I think you've taken that to the next level, providing a lot more, both time and room for, things beyond just the acute problems. You mentioned wellness, you mentioned family, kind of talking through those things. And so care, I think patient care should be primary and number one. And then I've also, I've heard this several times, but anything that can be automated will be automated. And it sounds to me like, there with medical billing, especially there's not a great opportunity there. That probably is going to be one of the big focuses, because there's just, it's low skill work for the most part. It's data entry, right?
Yeah. It is. I wouldn't say necessarily just data entry, because it really is understanding what the doc is saying inside of his note and making that connection. So it's kind of bridging that gap, if you will, at least from the coding perspective.
Right. But you think AI today is capable of that, or is that 2-3 years out?
I think it's capable of it to a certain percent. It's not 100%.
Okay.
I think the key thing is having the controls and the KPIs, if you will, in place to understand where it's working well, where it's not working well. It's if you kind of think about it, there's a ton of variables in that, and which is true in all healthcare. You have one physician that documents one way, you have another physician that documents another way. You may have a physician that documents very sparsely, and you have a physician that documents very robust. And taking that variability and applying a common set of automation, for lack of a better term, to it, it can be challenging at times. And I think you need to go into it eyes wide open, that you're going to have situations where it applies very well. It's not going to be 100%. The firm we talked to earlier this week, I think their benchmark was 67% of their claims are able to be fully automated, where the AI is able to go in and basically take the data in the note, code it, and drop the claim, where the other 33% needs to go through a manual coder.
Well, that's a huge amount of efficiency that's gained if it's 60+%.
Absolutely.
That's incredible, and it can only get better from here. And it's probably because you're talking about things like maintenance. I guess drugs, maintenance, conversations about things like diabetes care, blood pressure, high blood pressure, things that you're probably got enough data to pull from for that. But the more complicated things, it could be a rare form of cancer or other things. Right. It would be very difficult for it to take a conversation maybe from dictation or something like that and apply that to properly for billing.
Yeah, and the great thing about it is, there's every year there's new regs that come out, there's new standards that come out, there's new you're able to teach the tool those rules, and you're able to teach the tools those rules, and they apply them or they don't apply them. So once you have your kind of tech working appropriately, as your rules base change, then you have a much I would assume in the future you're going to have much more predictability in terms of success of coding, and that's true across the whole spectrum of things. That's true across the dictation pieces as well.
Right. So in your opinion, what is the ideal future for healthcare look like, both from a technological standpoint, but also in respect to access and availability to quality care?
From my view, and obviously I'm a bit jaded just because of the industry, and it frees the doc to do what the doc was trained to do. If you look at what a physician does today, and whether it's a traditional physician or even one of our physicians, they spend a lot of time doing tasks that aren't in front of the patient and aren't direct patient care. So the ideal moving forward is, we're able to claw that time back to the doctor. If you think about, what happened over the past, 10 plus years with, meaningful use and PQRS and a lot of the pay performance and shared savings, where initially meaningful use. I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with it, but it was the whole meaningful use program was to encourage doctors to move to electronic medical records. And you ask any doctor that went through that, they lost productivity in doing that, and they probably would argue they have not gained that productivity back today. Pulling up a paper chart, writing the notes in the paper chart is a lot more efficient for them than what they need to do in the EMR. And there's a number of reasons for that. I mean, there's a number of other requirements that have been imposed on our industry for documentation, and a lot of it driven by how we get reimbursed. Where this shift from fee for service to more of a pay for performance model. But long answer to your question, but I think it's the future is giving the doc that time back, as much of that time back as they can, so they can provide meaningful care to the patients and minimize the administrative overhead that they have, whether it's doing the documentation or any of those other tasks that are involved in the day that does not add direct value to the patients.
Yeah, I hear a common theme in what you're sharing. It's all about, patient value, right? It's about, better outcomes and care for patients. So maybe give some contrast again, go a little bit deeper into why concierge medicine even exists today. Because
Sure.
I think there's an underlying brokenness in healthcare that we both agree on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you certainly can look at it, and you should look at it from both sides. So let's start from the physician side. So it's interesting. Every physician that we interview, my question to the doctor is, why did you get into medicine? And and the right physician for us is the physician that answers that in some way, that it's a passion for care of people. And so now you contrast that with what a traditional physician is doing today. They are showing up in the office. They're spending 5 minutes with the patient. You may show up and you may have 5 things going on. You may have high blood pressure. You may have your triglycerides are out of range. It could be a whole number of things, but you're in for a cold. The doc has 5 minutes with the patient. They're going to talk about that cold. They don't have the time to dig into those 5 other things that are going on with you. And it's very unsatisfying for the doctor. I mean, that's not what the doctor got into medicine for. What concierge medicine does from the physician's side is give the doctor the time to truly take care of the patients and truly see those outcomes, see the improved outcomes in the patient's lives over time. So you're building that relationship. You're not meeting your patient for the first time every time you see them. Likewise, as a patient, you're not meeting your doctor for the first time every time you're seeing them. So they build those relationships. They're able to dig into what is important for their patients today and in the future. And then obviously you flip that on to the patient side. And if you go and look for a primary care physician today, excuse me, there's clearly a shortage. I mean, you would be hard pressed to move into a new town, find a primary care physician, and have an appointment within, say, a week or say a month, in certain locations. So what we provide is that, at the most basic and simple form is that access to a doctor that's there for you, that's invested in your long-term well-being. And again, that's at the most basic level. At the larger level, if we look at who we are as a practice, we are a bit of an overused term, is probably a much more eloquent way to say it, but we're more of a wellness practice. We committed to the integration of wellness and clinical care. Because you can solve a lot of health issues with lifestyle change. It doesn't always have to be, Troy, take this pill and call me in the morning. I mean, it truly can. It may be that you need to take this pill now because you are in such bad shape. You need some help right now. But for a lot of people, it's not. It may be that you need to work with one of our health coaches. We just implemented this thing, Wellness University, which is a whole curriculum of content around 4 metabolic states or 4 conditions, if you will, metabolic, cognitive, strength, and adrenal, and that really encompasses where our our challenges are from a health perspective. So our physicians then can meet with a patient that maybe they're totally stressed out, don't sleep, and needs to lose weight. He or she can work with our wellness and our health coaches as a partner to move them down that path where there may be some medications here, but also introduce lifestyle changes and address some of those, those other, again, lifestyle issues, so the medications may not be a long-term need for them. So again, you think about it, it's kind of back to what you thought of medicine 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I think medicine has taken, especially on the pharmaceutical side, such a therapeutic approach versus a solve the underlying problem, heal the whatever is causing the acute problem. And I like the philosophy there. Wellness isn't just about medicine. Wellness is more so like, how do we change behavior? And there's so many options nowadays when it comes to fast food, as an example, or options for distraction versus choosing healthy options like working out or taking a walk or other things. And so I love that whole body, whole mind wellness approach that you're taking, and I think it's imperative to the success of not just concierge, but really just the whole medical, field. And I don't see it changing at mass, and I do take problem with that, as I can tell you do.
And I think that your average physician would love to see it change at mass, but at the end of the day, they need to put food on the table, and the only way they put food on the table is to see 30, 40 patients a day.
Yeah, they have competing initiatives in their life, like their practice won't stay open if they don't do that.
Exactly.
Right? And because of the way it's kind of built out now. And I think that's a bigger issue than I think we can tackle today.
But to interrupt, but it kind of tied a bit back to kind of the technology. If you look at what's out there today, there are so many opportunities to gather data on what's going on with a patient outside of the clinic, outside of the doctor's office, be it wearables, and it's having, and I think that's one of the great things that we're starting to see those interfaces open up a bit, so that we can start to pull some of that information into our I would say our clinical data, but into our source of the truth for clinical data, so the doctors can actually look at that. So being able to take your Apple Health data and being able to take kind of all of those wearable data points out there, and so the consumer grade stuff, but then also on the kind of the more clinical pieces with your remote patient monitoring as well. I think that opens up the whole new area that really empowers our physicians to provide just care like we've never been able to provide in the past. The whole remote patient monitoring, and with some of the loosening up in terms of reimbursement for it, makes it a lot easier to deploy that within a medical practice. And there's huge upside for the physician and the patient for that. I mean, just you think about a blood pressure cuff, where your patient takes their blood pressure and it goes back into a system. If it is out of range, the doc gets alerted. If it's significantly out of range, all kinds of red lights go off, and there's a whole escalation protocol in place, and the doc's able to adjust medications on I don't want to say a real-time basis, but a much more real-time basis than they ever would in the past, to head off, what potentially could be very adverse outcomes if you didn't have those things in place.
It really is incredible the direction things are going, and I've seen some of these devices you're talking about where they can be monitored by a physician who doesn't even have to be in the same state. And you and I talked a little bit about telemedicine and the potential for that. You having to leverage it, going into to COVID and things like that, and be dynamic. And I was curious along the lines of like your role as a COO and your previous role as a CTO. Like, when it comes to new technologies, I'm curious, like, how do you assess what works within your business? Like, what's the process that you run through, the playbook per se, that you kind of have in your business today that helps you assess, like, is this valuable to us? Is this valuable to our team, and certainly to our patients as kind of the end point?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, it's our physician. And as you said, telemedicine is a great example of that. We've been talking telemedicine for, I can't remember, say I've been with the company 10 years, so 7 of the 10 years we've been talking about telemedicine. And and the conversation is always with our physician leaders. How does that fit into how you deliver care? And I won't get into the details of why we chose not to go down that road 7 years ago, but with COVID, we had to. We did it very quick, and we were very successful with it, and now it's a part of our practice. But that is, in general, how we approach all the technology, which kind of goes back to my background from a technology perspective. I've never been an advocate of bringing in technology for the sake of technology. So it needs to address a business need, and inside of our practice, it needs to address a very specific clinical need that we have. And there needs to be a application that's broad enough to invest time and dollars to figure out how to make that technology work inside of our environment, inside of our infrastructure. Because as you know, technology, the implementation of a new piece of technology inside of any business is not just a technology challenge. It is a people process change. I mean, you have a lot of pieces in there, and you need to truly invest in getting the technology implemented, but also making sure that your operational processes are able to support the use of that, and that the communication, you need to sell it to your internal users of that technology as well. Remote patient monitoring is a great example of that. From a business, it looked like a no-brainer. There is a reimbursement on it that's over and above what the cost is. And we use an outsourced service, so that we have the firm that we use is staffed at call center, but they're nurses, they're RNs that staff it. So they've taken on all of that burden. But you look at it from a business perspective, the reimbursement we get from the payers is greater than what our cost is. So it's a revenue stream. So that makes a lot of sense. The value prop, if you will, for the patients is huge, as I described a minute ago. But like anything, it's change management inside of an organization is tough. So you need to make sure that whatever you're going to roll out, you're going to be able to have people that are going to embrace it, and they're going to be willing to use it inside of their practice. So again, long answer to your question. I'm sorry, I kind of went all over the place there,
no,
but it's first and foremost, we have a group of very good physician leaders that we sit down with. We look at the technology, we look at where it fits, what need it fits in the organization. And then once we're all nodding up and down, then we look at it from a technology and operations perspective and understand what's the impact on the organization to implement that technology inside of our company, and is that something that is the benefit outweighs the cost? And then from an operations perspective, how disruptive would it be to our current process and operations to make the changes to be able to support that?
Curious, just in your experience, like do leaders in your role adapt too quickly or too slowly to new technology? I know I'm asking you to kind of make a general assessment, but do you think just in general in healthcare specifically that it's too quick to maybe implement something, and obviously there's downsides to that, or too slow, which there's obvious downsides to that as well?
I'm going to give you a cop-out answer to that, both, because it's true. There are companies out there that, and it's kind of an interesting time in healthcare, because there are those companies out there that are kind of on that leading, pretty close to bleeding edge from a technology perspective. I mean, there are, and I won't name the firms, but firms that are funded by the leading technology companies in Silicon Valley. So they they have in their DNA and in their charter to lead with technology and innovate with technology, much as their investors did. Unfortunately, the innovation takes hold a little bit slower inside of healthcare. But then you have a lot of you look at traditional practices and larger networks. They're a lot slower to move, a lot slower to embrace the new technologies, and they're more. And you think about why is that? One could argue that in a larger organization, your physician leaders are probably the physician leaders that have been practicing for 40 years. So, they are more traditional in terms of how they approach healthcare, where some of your newer startup companies are driven by physicians that are newer in practice, have more of that entrepreneurial bug, and want to figure out how to leverage some of the technology that they see kind of across the board, more on the commercial side in healthcare.
I think you're always going to have, different people. I was kind of getting more along the lines of like there's so much out there when it comes to technology. There's so much that people are sharing, so many new ideas, and it can almost feel like drinking from a fire hose at times, right? Like on the change. And I'm sure you get hit up all the time by, technology companies that say that they can solve issues for you. I would ask, like, of your top three, like, what are the top three issues that you're trying to solve, like right now, that you think that technology is going to solve for in the future, in the near future, excuse me?
Sure. So, our big one we're solving, which I think every healthcare organization is solving for, is physician burnout. We've gone through just a tremendous, pressure test over the past couple of years in healthcare with COVID, and then the demands coming out of COVID, where people were behind on some of the preventive care and getting. So our docs have been through the ringer over the past couple of years. So we're looking hard at technology, and some of the technologies that I spoke to. You look at the dictation side, I think that's an opportunity for ways to free our doc up so that they're not doing their notes at 10 o'clock at night. You look at the medical billing or medical coding piece. We're trying to pull more of that off of our docs' plates so they can focus purely on patient care and not coding. You look at how we've leveraged a whole technology platform inside of our Wellness University, and we've done integrations between that platform back to our EMR, so that we're able to surface the visit summaries from the health coaches to the docs in a very seamless way, but also that the docs have a resource and a set of tools that they can use to be comfortable to hand things off to another group of people, so they know they're being taken care of. So from what we're looking at productivity tools for our physicians. And that shows up in some of those AI tools, whether it's the dictation or the coding pieces. We're looking at ways that we can create better interfaces between kind of the partner groups inside of our organization and our physicians to better support our physicians, and at the end of the day provide better care. And then I guess the third piece is, we all have to kind of pay our bills and keep our lights on, and a lot of our reimbursement on the medical service side is under shared savings, and there's a lot of analytics, and there's a lot of reporting and analysis that goes into that. So we're really trying to leverage a lot of technology to kind of stay in front of that curve as well.
Excellent answers, and I appreciate your insights. I like to bring it home with this question, and I think it's one of the ones that people enjoy hearing the most, primarily because there's a lot of people out there that are listening to this that want to be in a role like yours at some point in their future. And you've taken some unique zigs and zags along the way around technology and healthcare and things like that. But you've found a kind of a synergistic place where all of those things come together. What advice would you give your younger self? And it could be along the path of getting to where you're at, or just in general.
So I would give you the general: invest in your 401k and buy Apple and Amazon. But seriously, be patient. I think I'm not a very patient person. And luckily it's worked for me. But you tend to look for instant gratification. trust the people that you're working with. I mean, obviously you want to be in a place where you enjoy working. You know, the key, and I was talking to somebody earlier today about this, the key to a great job is where Sunday is not something you're dreading Monday. And, and that is first and foremost. And if you have that, and you have a good team of people that you're working with, trust yourself, trust your team, focus on bringing value each and every day, because it is recognized. And not, there's been a handful of different threads in LinkedIn recently about leadership, and it's really interesting that we're starting to see more of that today than we have in the past. And you think about, we've been educated and trained to, get a degree in management, to manage people. Look for leaders, embrace those skills, and learn from them, and again, be patient.
Yeah, I like that. And you're right. There's a big difference between management and leadership. Leadership is about inspiring people.
It is.
Management is about, usually it's more punitive.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah. So this was a really good conversation, Jack. I always like to ask, where can people find you, connect with you, chat with you, follow you, or, dialogue with you?
Sure. My social media platform of choice is LinkedIn. So I don't know if there's any other Jack Bretchers out on LinkedIn, so I should be pretty easy to find out on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Great. LinkedIn it is. And if you like this conversation and looking forward to more, make sure you boot the like button and subscribe to the channel for more conversations in and around technology, healthcare, and business in general. So thank you, Jack, for coming on here with me. And maybe we'll circle back at some point, and I'll get an update on how things are coming.
That sounds great. I enjoyed it. Thanks, Troy.